Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, depending on what time you end up listening to or watching this. This is kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it an emergency show. That's not the right term, but it's like a necessary show that it was born out of necessity. This is EGBE MBIWAN MONJIMBO coming to you on Vosaworld Radio. This is the Musings and Music Show. And this is the musings part of it, so the serious side of it. And I have a guest here with me who I haven't met in person before. In fact, this is the first time I believe I'm actually setting eyes on her, as I can say, but she came recommended, born out of the show that I had a couple of weeks ago with Kids Fonzenui, who in a week's time will be going out there to London to run a marathon. To raise awareness for autism, and we're all trying to find a cure. So before I even go on and ramble any further, I'm going to ask the fine lady in front of me here to go ahead and introduce herself, so our viewers and our listeners can know who we have in front of us today, and we'll go on into why exactly she is here. Please go on.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure to be speaking with you, Ms. EGBE, about a topic that I am so absolutely passionate about, and I live it every day, both professionally and personally, autism. And so it is an honor for me to be here and to share my knowledge, whatever of it I have, because I'm learning new things on a daily basis. So I am more than excited to share this information with you all. And I thank you so much for creating this platform, especially to reach out to our people. And I am very excited. So my name is Dr. Bernadette NDIFORCHU Kilo, and I'm an autism consultant for a medical group here in Atlanta, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And I am also the subject matter expert for autism for the medical group. And so my work entails me to not only determine who gets an assessment for autism once we get the referrals in, but I also help parents navigate both the medical and the educational system once they do get that diagnosis of autism. I'm also a support parent for an organization in Georgia called Parent to Parent of Georgia. And I get parents on a daily basis as they support, just to guide them and listen to them and support them with whatever they need. And the demographic for Parent to Parent of Georgia is not only African, but it's everybody from everywhere. As long as you live in the state of Georgia, you're more than likely to get paired with me, and you'll get that phone call from me just to help you. And I also have a lot of knowledge, extensive knowledge with the special education laws. So I am rights law trained as well. And so that helps me advocate and give tips to parents to empower them so that they can help their children achieve their full potential academically, even though they learn differently. So we have to know all those things. So I'm hoping that I could share as much information that I can with you all. So thank you so much, Ms. EGBE.
I don't know. It doesn't happen often that I'm speechless, but if I could, I just reach right out. I'm going to give you a virtual hug. Reach right through the screen and give you a virtual hug. Yeah, you see, I told you already that I teach, and then I'm a mother. I'm a member of a community. We need people like you. I don't know about advocating for cloning, but if I had to advocate for cloning, then I'd clone you, because you are needed. You and your expertise are needed. You heard her say, dear listeners, dear viewers, you heard her run down what she does, who she is. And if you're honest, if you're even it's just a fact. We need people like her, because I could come here, go get a little booklet somewhere, something somebody has published, and I read to you. You listen to me, read it and read it. It would never have as much impact as having somebody from the inside, well qualified academically, socially, to do this, and who has been doing this for years. And that is how, what she's explained there is how I got to know her, because the minute I opened my mouth and said, autism. And had Mr. Fonzenu here the other day. Somebody, her own sister-in-law says, "Oh, did you say autism? Oh, let me give you a name to go find." She came. That's how I started getting the references. When I went back to Kids Fonzenu himself, he says, and I mentioned her name. He says, "Oh, that's what's even been helping us here." She makes trips to Charlotte here to come and help. She's been helping a whole bunch of families. So it's not as if I'm the one who just decided, "Oh, I think she'll be good to come." No, she comes well recommended, well vetted, and then you had the qualifications your own self. I'm the one who should be thanking you for taking the time out of that busy schedule I just heard you mention there to even come and sit here and talk about this. I had a chat with you the other day and I could not wait for this day to come so people can understand, because we are sitting here puzzled. When I was growing up, I'm much older than you. When I was growing up, I said I did not hear the word autism mentioned in Kabul. Doesn't mean that there was nobody born autistic. We just thought different things about whoever we saw. Witchcraft is the first one that comes to mind. Namumu Pikin. And then the way we acted then was to hide them. I know of a case where finally somebody was saying, I lost my brother, and I'm going, "You had a brother? What brother is that?" They said, "No, we had that child." I had been to that house and visited a number of times, and never saw that kid. I didn't even know the child existed, because that's what we did with the kids that were there. They were an embarrassment to the family. And also they were, nobody really quite knew, not to try to blame people. They didn't quite know what to do. They didn't quite have any means, not knowing what to handle. So that was the issue then. Now still, I don't know, you know the stats and everything, and you'll give us that in a minute, but I somehow find it hard to think there were as many kids on the special needs kids back then as there are now. There seems to be a very marked increase in the number of kids born with autism. And I don't quite know why. First of all, I don't know whether you'll mind me asking you, you said you do this on an academic, from a professional level, and then you also do this on a personal level.
Right.
So before we even go on, maybe you want to talk about that part so people listening to us can understand even better why you said that and why it was important for you, why I had no choice, as far as I'm concerned, but to bring you here to talk about this. Do you mind?
Right. Absolutely not. I don't. So the personal aspect of my interaction and my engagement with autism, it stems from me being also a mother raising 3 children on the spectrum. And it has been a tremendous blessing, because I say, without my children, I don't think I will be where I am today, because the knowledge I have has come from firsthand experience. And I took it as a calling, and I heeded to it, and it has served me extremely well. Though it may seem as if autism is something that just started of recent, and that the increase has been very recent, it hasn't, because autism has existed for years. The name autism, by the way, hasn't existed for that long. It's been years, but it hasn't. Now, how autism has moved from one community to another has also varied as to who got the name earlier. We in Cameroon, we got the name late, whereas some other countries have been having that name autism for years. So we're getting to know what the name is. We've called it everything else in the book except that, which is autism. And so we're getting to know that. But yes, I am a proud mother, absolutely proud of my 3 kiddos. Hence the name of my business, the 3Bs Autism Consulting, because they're the inspiration behind that.
Right.
And they're doing fantastic. It's been a language. I just had to pick up another foreign language. That's how I looked at it.
That's how you look at it.
And yet autism is another language. And I learned to speak the language with the different accents. When I say the different accents, I use accents so that we can relate to the fact that autism is a spectrum, and each person has a different accent as to how they express themselves. And so I use that to say, hey, this is how I learned this language called autism, which at work, they say, she's the autism whisperer, because yes, I truly am, without a doubt, if there's such a thing that exists. And I do speak autism without a doubt because of them.
Wow. You see, we hear of parents who have one child, one special needs child, and we all are, oh wow, that's quite a challenge. There's good to have a lot of them to do, maybe 2, and then 3. Okay, how many children do you have altogether?
I have 3.
So all 3 of your children are on the spectrum.
Absolutely, all 3 of them. So when I tell parents, both at work and both personally outside of work, when I tell them that I literally have the spectrum in my house, I mean it. When I say that I have the spectrum in my house, it's literal.
Right.
It's not textbook.
This is not, and this is the spectrum. When you the only thing spectrum 1 knew about was back in class, you're doing the physics class, that's showing you the little prism and that's what one thought. Then you come here and a company, a TV company, the spectrum. We never knew that there'll come a time when you actually, that term now, when I hear it, I now relate it almost exclusively to autism. And that's the education that we all need. And I will I will just bring up a story right now in the middle of this about the chat I had with kids. We were talking and he made a statement there while we were chatting. And he said, but I said, what can we as the community do? So here's the thing. How can we help as a community? He mentioned the awareness thing. First of all, just know that it's there, recognize it for what it is, stop judging and all of that stuff. And then he gave an example about how there was a gathering somewhere and some kid was walking right by through the exit and going on out. And some guys were standing there and didn't flinch. The kid just walked right past them. He, as the parent of a child on the spectrum, it clicked and said, that child is going, where is he going? And right after the child, and caught that child just before the child was trying to get to cross the street, just walking. Only for him to call me, I think a week ago today. Well, he didn't even call first, he just sent a video. I don't want to play that video now because I don't know what's rights. But that was a video of an incident that had happened that just broke his heart. It broke mine too because I was in tears. It was at some gathering, I think in Atlanta. Have you heard? I'm sure you've seen that video. And it happened that a kid did just what he was saying. Walked right past from a gathering, went out the door. And by the time, and that's a split second before you start thinking, let us blame the mother, let us blame the father. That's a split second thing. It has happened to us at the mall, spectrum kid or not. So split second thing, they say, where's the kid? They try to search for the kid, and lo and behold, that kid had gone and fallen into a lake and drowned. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my goodness. Because sometimes we say these things, and I brought him on the show, I'm bringing you on the show, and people are saying, what's the point? I mean, this thing, I bet they don't want to discuss it, they don't want to talk about it. But I'm saying that sadly proves the relevance of what it is that kids is doing, what it is that you are doing, and why, for me, it's not even a debatable issue. I don't have to think twice. Why we need to come? That child was, I hear, 5 years old. 5 years old. And I'm sure the people who were standing there by the door now, if they know now that they know better, would have said, baby, where are you going? Come on back here. But it is the lack of awareness. You just see a child passing and you think it's just going, you just never know. And that is why I bring that up here, because it saddened me and it just struck me even more and said, oh no, then I can't afford to just be quiet. I need to keep talking. In fact, I don't even understand why I'm not hearing much more or seeing many more of you and hearing these voices than we currently have. Can you explain what's the deal? Why is that the case?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we lack a lot of awareness in the, I would speak specifically for the community that I'm being more involved in now, which is the Cameroonian community.
Right.
But I have been around for years in the Nigerian community. As a matter of fact, I am one of the advisors on, as well as subject matter expert for autism on the Nigerian Parent Autism organization. And they have a Facebook page. This young lady reached out to me 7 years ago. She sent me a text message and said, hey, I got your number from a classmate of mine. I went to medical school, his wife, that's the sister, and said, hey, I got a number. I got your number from them. And can we talk? And I said, sure. So I called her and we struck up a conversation, and she said, hey, I'm starting this organization, and I was told you were the best person to talk about autism. Can you join us and help my people? So, because I would love to raise awareness. This is a mother who has an older child with autism, and she feels like some of the things that if she knew earlier on,
what we say, if I knew now what I
right,
knew then, yes, it would have been so much better.
So her goal was to let other parents and other mothers not go down the lane that she had been down. And she said, please, can you help me? And that is how I joined the Nigerian parent autism organization.
That is the right attitude to have. I'm going to ask, do we have an equivalent association, Cameroonian association? Do we?
We just recently put one together of recent. I would say it's as old as 3 months.
Really?
Maybe it's older than that, but I just became aware and was signed up to it 3 months ago. But I don't think it has existed at all right here. The other thing is, because we lack awareness in our community, then having a platform for it has been a challenge. I remember reaching out to this one young lady who has a talk show and is very, very, she has a lot of segments. She does a lot of talks on Facebook. Right. And in passing, we're having a conversation, and I said, hey, you know what? I do autism, and I know autism is a huge issue in our community.
It is.
Well, I could say that because I work with a lot of parents in the background. So I know what the numbers are looking like. I'm very aware of what's going on. But maybe to her, it's not a big issue because maybe she doesn't know anybody personally, either in her
How can you not?
Friends.
I'm sorry, time out. How can you not? I'm sitting here, I'm not even within your age bracket, because to tell you the truth, yeah, the older ones, not as much, but the younger ones within your age bracket, and look, I can sit here and name off the top of my head without catching my breath 10 that I can just name up front. So how would you not be aware that that is an issue? How does anybody not either have someone within their family or their circle of friends? And then there's some of the kids that I know who are grown. Yes, when we first got to the States here, those kids were children, but now they've become college-age children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How do you manage to live here and you don't know any? So, right. so that's a puzzle that I guess, I don't know. But sorry for interrupting you, but I have to stop and say, but how?
That's okay. So I will talk in defense of those people as well. But right. Just to continue the point that I was trying to make. After we had this conversation, it was clear to me that this was something that she wasn't, it wasn't in line with her goals. Okay. And that's fine. Okay. And her objectives. That's all right. That's all right. Which is absolutely fine. Yes. But at that time, I knew that finding a platform in the Cameroonian community would have been a challenge for me. So I continued working with the communities that were open to me, working with them. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. And it was a recent that the Cameroonian community had started reaching out. Mm-hmm. And I think the first organization that I did a presentation on autism was the Association of Cameroonian Pharmacists in the Americas. That was the first organization. And after that, I've had people who have had other platforms, mothers and the young lady in England who does a fantastic job in raising awareness. She had me on her show as a guest speaker, just to create as much awareness as they can. So awareness is what we need, because our people are not yet, they don't know what this thing looks like. They don't know what it is to begin with. Right. And because of that, the assumption or it perceives, it comes across as if this thing just started yesterday, but it's been there since before World War I. And I've had Cameroonian doctors who asked me, like, wait, when they were growing up in Cameroon, they didn't see this. You did. The problem is you just didn't know what you were looking for. So you can't tell me that it wasn't there. If the name wasn't autism, if you called it idiot, then of course you called the person an idiot, not knowing that. We had the term. So if you call everything. Yes, so if you call the child Mumu, of course. If you're using that, how can you find autism? Because my question when they tell me that, I'm like, what is autism? And when they give me their definition, it makes sense because what they're telling me is autism is not autism. Of course, that's why you miss it. It's just like if you tell anybody, say, hey, go under the table and get me the blue ball.
Right.
Well, if there's a red and black ball there, they're never going to find the blue ball.
Correct. Correct.
So exactly. So you have to know what you're looking for.
To start with, then you can be able to say, okay, to identify it as being this. So what is it then, so people can know what it is that they should be looking out for? Let's start there. What is it that we should see? Because I have heard about kids mentioned it about early detection being important. So what is it that a parent should see and start going, what's going on here, so that they can now get tested, the detection get done early, and it all works better for both parents and children. Can you please shed some light on that?
Absolutely. Early detection, absolutely. Without a doubt, early intervention works. I will tell you this from a personal experience. It's always a joy to see your kids make that 360 turns around.
Right.
From being this to you're like, okay, what happened? Like, where did all of that go? Right. Early intervention works. Personally and professionally, we see it in the office, at work, every single day with early intervention. What parents need to look out for, there are stages of development. Development is not something which is still an issue back home, that those things are not being charted, but we are in a country where those things are being charted. I have parents at work I have this one mom who's Cameroonian. And when I reached out to her, from the last name, I knew she was from Cameroon.
Right.
But when I reached out to her, I'm calling from a professional standpoint. I'm not calling as a Cameroonian who wants to talk to you on a personal level. I'm calling because I am Dr. Kilo, who works for this organization. Right. And when I reached out to her, this is what she told me, and which is what I find very common with a lot of us. Well, you people in this country, you like to slap labels on everything. This child is normal. There's nothing wrong with my child. And I told her, I'm like, yes, you have the right to say that. I understand how you feel about it. But let me tell you something from a professional standpoint. I will talk to you as a professional, then I'll come to you as a mother, because I too am a mother. And so I had to let her know that, listen, this is what we expect a child to be at. This is where your child is. It's not like 2 points below. We're talking about the gap is it's huge. When there is a wide gap, and especially when the multiple areas of development affected, I tell every parent that right there is a red flag. A lot of them always tell me it's just a speech issue. I get it. I've gotten that from parents who are also not Africans. I get that too from every demographic.
There's a bit of denial in there. There is, you just don't want to believe it.
Right. So I get that from every demographic. But what I encourage parents is, when I see the signs, I tell them. I don't tell them it is autism, because it will be premature for me to say that without having all the data. But if the child has all the red flags, the best I could do is tell them that I will encourage you to have an assessment on this child sooner than later. Right. The reason I push for that is because the first 5 years of a child's development is the biggest and the most critical. Right. That right there is called the window of opportunity. If you miss it, it's not that you can't make the turnaround. It just takes longer and it takes more work. Right. Unless you have 6 au pairs living with you, or you have 10 nannies. Right. And you're willing to lose that window of opportunity after 5, hire all the nannies and all the therapists, so that you don't have to stress having to drive left and right. Hire all the Uber drivers, so that way they can shuttle your child to therapy back and forth, and you can just sit and work and relax, because we live in a country where we have to work. We have other things to do. We have
Yes.
to multitask.
That's how bills get paid.
You have a family, exactly. You have a family to raise. So I have to put that in perspective for them. The first 5 years, there's a campaign by Easter Seals that started a while back, and it's called Make the First 5 Years Count. It matters. The first 5 years is critical for a child's development. So what parents need to look out for is how the child is developing, the milestones. You have kids that don't meet the milestones. Look into it. For the children who meet milestones, such as they walked at a certain age, they were sitting unsupported at the right time, and then you get to that speech. I have a problem with my community, is that speech or language skills and communication are the two words that are mostly interchangeable. When I ask a parent, how does your child usually let you know what they want? And they tell me, they'll tell me they want milk. I'm like, is your child saying, I want milk? These are techniques that I have to use when I interview my parents to get data from them. Because when your child says milk, you as the parent, you make the assumption immediately that the child wants milk. The question is this child requesting or are they labeling? You have to make that difference. And so when a parent makes the assumption that it's milk, then they get to tell me, oh yeah, my child can speak. No, your child has language, clearly, because your child said milk, but your child doesn't have communication skills, which, by the way, is one of the red flags for autism. Right. Social communication, because that right there is a social setting. Right. Requesting is one of the social settings. And so that right there is a red flag. The number of words, a child is doing speech therapy for 6 months and they're still at 5 words. That's a huge problem. And that's a major red flag. Right. That when the child has persistent speech delay, it is an issue. It needs to be further investigated to make sure that there isn't anything lurking on the bottom. Right. Autism comes with a bucket load of other things, to include sensory issues. So when the child starts having, they're having sensory issues, some of the things I get from parents is, I got this one very recently on Friday. My child is very hands-on. Okay. My child is very hands-on. I document these things because we have to train our pediatricians at work also because they miss it. And so we've started this campaign at work to train our pediatricians so they catch these things on time. And this mom told me, oh no, my son, he's a very hands-on kind of child. Likes to do his own things in his own way, at his own time. He's very independent. I have a problem with a 2-year-old who's independent. I don't have a problem if you have a 6-year-old who's trying to be independent. But when you have 2-year-olds who we even encourage to be independent, because by that time we're trying to win them and say, okay, you can do this, go to the toilet, I don't have to follow you and clean your derriere. You see, that's that. But at that stage, yes. You see, just like even the Bible baby talk, when the baby says, well, look, coo, do. It sounds sweet and pretty when they're at a certain age. But if you're doing coo, do at 8, then you hit the nail on the head with this whole stages of development. Just keep talking, then I'll ask you later on whether there's even a chart somewhere that we can be sharing. So please go on. Absolutely. So those things are very important. When a parent tells me that, oh, my child is very independent, or I got another one, this week as well on Wednesday, the parent told me, oh, my child is extremely polite, doesn't look at people when they talk to them. I'm like, oh, really? We're talking about an 18-month-old here. Right. So when we get this superhuman little kids, qualities that are not relevant for the age that the child is at. Right. We start paying close attention to those things. And you have the stages of development, especially communication, because communication is the big thing for children with autism. Social skills and communication. So that right there is major. But when we look at the stages of development, when it comes to language acquisition, the first thing is the child has to coo. When the child starts cooing, they're developing language skills. Right. You have to follow the trend. From cooing, they start babbling. Ba 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 da 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 ma ma
Yes,
ma
we,
ma
we,
ma.
we have a little book, so we write child's first words, dada.
Absolutely.
You're right.
After that, the next thing a child has to do is point.
Okay.
If the child doesn't have the word for it,
They
but point, they have made the milestones accordingly. But if it stops at pointing and the word doesn't come with it, because after pointing, the next step should be at least pointing and saying the word for the item that they're
pointing at. Yes.
Pointing disappears and only the word to the item that they want comes out. Those are the stages of speech and language acquisition. If any one of those is chopped off, the other one gets affected. That tells me in the long term, communication skills for this child. So we're looking at long term for this child. It's the same thing with writing skills. Most children who have fine motor issues early on in life, for some reason, those become some of the subtle red flags that when they come to us later on, we know we had seen this many years ago, but to the parent, it was nothing.
It went right over their heads. They didn't catch it.
Right. But when I walk, I have a family. This is from my personal experience. I had a family that I drove to Charlotte. They were concerned about their first child. I went to Charlotte to observe because I will do observations. It's best for me to do an observation because when I do an observation, I can tell you the things that you have normalized as a parent. You've missed those things. And it wasn't intentional. It was unintentional because you just didn't know.
Yes.
And so to you, you're thinking typical, but it's not typical. It's atypical. Those behaviors are atypical. So when I went there, I was only in the garage. I hadn't come into the house. And I saw the first child, gave him a hug. And I said, nah, I'm not worried about this one. I said, but by the way, if he came to me when he was younger, he would have gotten the diagnosis because I see the remnants. And so I walked into the living room and I told them, I went back to the garage and I got both parents. I said, come. I said, you see that one right there? That's the one I'm worried about. They both looked at me and all like, wait a minute, we called you for the first son. Why are you worried about a second child? It was the position he was sitting in. It's called a tripod position. When the child assumes a tripod position, I wish I could demonstrate it for you, but if you could look it up. When a child assumes a tripod position is an indication of truncal weakness. Okay. When a child has truncal weakness, that right there is a sign of a developmental delay. That means their muscle here is not developed. Now, I'm
trying to picture tripod. I'm thinking about the thing you put a camera on to stand and it has the three.
So the tripod is when the child sits down and they move their legs outwards and their bum sits in the middle of that. See that? So their bum sits, so their legs are like this. So if you consider my elbows, right, as the feet of the child, so the child bends their knees to come in like this, and their bum sits in here in this space. And they're sitting. So that is a tripod position. When I see a child sitting in tripod,
and you're sitting there thinking your child is very athletic and nimble.
Yeah, you're like, oh, your child is flexible. Your child will have handwriting issues in the future. Let's work on it now. That gives me an idea as to when they were able to raise their head up from a sitting position. If you look at a baby, you put them on their stomach, right? A lot of us have the tendency to miss that. I know we have two different cultures, so this might get a little bit controversial, but growing up in Cameroon, we put our babies on our bellies, right?
Right.
When we come to the US, there's a campaign to put them on our backs. And so sometimes parents may miss the opportunity to catch the child, to see if they struggle when they're on their belly, to raise themselves up.
Yes, that's, you see, my age is showing because at the time when I had my own kids, that was the whole point.
The baby gets to do that. It's just like doing push-ups. They strengthen these muscles And so when they don't get to strengthen that, it could push them to have that tripod position. So when a child has truncal weakness, that tells me fine motor skills is no bueno, no good.
Mhm.
So I can predict that handwriting will be an issue. And so I will tell the parents, work on it immediately.
Wow.
So,
It's almost something like the stories we say about a Gambian man. You're putting throwing calories and saying, okay, this is this and this is that. But I'm sitting here, I'm a teacher too, and going, wow, you know, it's also here, at least. When I think about our Cameroon, sometimes I hope things have changed and really evolved. But at least here, even in regular school, there were certain skills when a kid was in kindergarten, when the teachers were asked to report on. Because that time it wasn't so much the grade and how much you can do. What math problems are you solving in kindergarten? Those were the things that the whole report card that my kids used to bring back home said that the child can tie his shoelaces. They can do the so and so motor skills, which they would have picked up on, which I like when you went to school in Cameroon, go. The one who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, get out your cane, whip from head, pull his ear, pull his cheek. There was something like, what motor skills? Can you count, bring out your counting 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you catch a fish alive? That was it.
Right.
So I'm thinking about how many kids will slip through that. Here it's already better, but I'm really hearing things that I just haven't heard before. Tripod for me, tripod is like, I hadn't heard the word tripod used in this sense.
Right. So it's a lot of times, it can be challenging for parents because you're not sure what to look out for, which is okay. And that's why you have your pediatrician.
Correct.
And you also have, I tell parents, trust your instincts. Your instincts will tell you. And we have great doctors out there, but there's still a lot that they need help on. We did a presentation, and when I say we, that's my department, which is developmental pediatrics.
Right.
We did a presentation last month, which was, we were the ones that did the continual medical education presentation for the pediatrics team, because our department falls under pediatrics.
Right.
And we decided to give them a test. Let's test our pediatricians, because we've had concerns with some of the referrals that they've sent to us. And we could tell from the referrals, like, oh my God, they're really lost. Sometimes I open them, I'm like, why did you send this kid to me again? But then I have to make the call and like reach out to the parents and, you know, try to get an idea of what's going on. And so we tested them. Interesting.
To say the very least.
Yes. We have work to do. So it's not uncommon that I have met families and I've asked them, do you have concerns about your child? And they told me, no, I don't. Or, yeah, my pediatrician hasn't said anything. I know why your pediatrician hasn't said anything. Could be two reasons. Probably because your pediatrician doesn't know what to look out for, because we had to yell at the one word we never want to see, and they're flagging every chart in our organization now as I speak. If you see a child who's 2 years old and they're nonverbal, if you put this sentence in your chart, in your notes, wait and see, you warrant being fired. What are you waiting to see? You have a 2-year-old that's nonverbal, two. It's worse to have a 6-year-old, because I just had that recently on Thursday. I have a 6-year-old that's nonverbal.
We are still doing wait and see.
Exactly, for a 6-year-old. I also had 5 years ago, I had a 15-year-old.
And we're still waiting to see.
That's what Dad did. He's from Senegal. He waited for 15 years. The community, I call them community doctors. These are friends and family that told him, oh no, just wait, he'll outgrow it. Oh no, wait. So I told him, when your son got to, I counted 5, 6. The funny thing is, the child was diagnosed at 18 months and Dad never brought him back to us. Now he's 15 years and he comes to me and says, can I get a result?
Will change.
He kept the child at home, never took him anywhere. And everybody just kept telling him, oh yeah, he's going to outgrow it. He's going to outgrow it. And it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen, that I met a 15-year-old And I had to use SpongeBob to communicate with him. And his dad was surprised that his son had words, but he cannot express himself. And I'm like, yeah, you have to use their interest to communicate with them. So I asked Dad, what does he like? And he said, SpongeBob. So I went on the internet and I printed out a SpongeBob picture. I brought it into the room. I had a conversation. Now, when I say conversation, it isn't a fluent conversation like
Right.
you are having.
It's communication.
Right.
Yes.
We had a communication, which was very informative for me. And I'm like, this is what your son is saying. I got one words from him and I'm like, okay, this is what he likes. This is what, and Dad was like, oh my God, how were you able to get that? I said, Dad, right here, SpongeBob. But my question is, at what point did you think it was okay for your 15-year-old, who's extremely academically advanced, without a doubt, because I looked at his grades from school and I had to put it in perspective for Dad. I said, listen to me. This is what you've done to this child. So you could understand. Your son, looking at his grades, is very well Harvard candidate.
Wow.
Now, he makes the application to Harvard, gets that interview. You go with him. They look at his name and they call him next for the interview. You walk in, they ask your son the question and you answer. I said, I'm putting that in perspective for you. I said, you see the problem here. You're coming to me at 15 for this child to request a speech therapy referral. He's nonverbal.
Right. He gets it. He's soaking everything in. He is far above the average in terms of IQ.
Yeah.
It's nonverbal.
Exactly. And there are a lot of them out there. A lot of them. As a matter of fact, more than 90% of children on the spectrum have an average to above average IQ. So banish the word dumb, demi-fool, fool,
idiot,
stupid,
idiot, retarded.
No. That's how, exactly. That is how we know the difference. Their IQ, for some odd reason, is not affected. When IQ becomes affected, it is something else, not the autism. Autism can exist with many other things. Just like any other disease like diabetes, you could have hypertension, you could have diabetes, you could have
other related things, but that is not it.
Same thing with autism. Autism can exist with many other things.
My goodness, I learned that from myself, my own self. I guess I'm the so-called mumu that deserves the title. Because I was sitting there when I was listening to that video that kids played, where he had the guy talking about Steve Jobs and all the other who geniuses that we know have achieved fantastic things in this world, whose IQ just amazes you, and then to find out they were on the spectrum. And I'm going, then it looks to me as if these gifted people are instead the ones that are on the spectrum. Those of us who call ourselves normal, that's exactly what we are. Normal, as in mediocre, and just there, flat there, with thank God for the little bit of thing you can do. Whereas these ones are the ones that are gifted and talented. And then they are shrouded by this thing where if we fail to understand and fail to understand it, like we're doing, then we are preventing them and depriving the world, absolutely, not just of brilliance, to think that they have all of that in them. And it's a matter of we have trying to figure out how to get it out. And I'm hearing this and going, then the parents, the community, it's our job then. We have a part to play in this. So what you're saying there, look at the SpongeBob thing. That dad definitely lost his child to bits. But I was in maybe some kind of denial, didn't follow up and everything. But I think about the many that I do know also who have such jobs and who have such priorities that I'm afraid they're never going to find out what this kid can really do, what it can really do to sit down, take the time with the patience that it takes and the focus that it takes to sit down and say, this is my special child. What are they good at? Which is what you just said. We already, as parents, are supposed to do that for all our children, whether they're on the spectrum or not. It's your job to say, my goodness, boy, this child, look at how he plays the piano. He's not the same like his daughter who can solve any math problem at age 1. He's not solving math problems, but look at that when he speaks. Look at the charisma he commands, and not to put him in the theater class, let him go and shine out there. And the one who's athletic and go do. So if you're not sitting there, if you're not there to start with, you're on all of these trips and all of these parties and things, and you're not even looking, how are you going to spot it out, my dear, precious parents out there, young parents, you know?
Right. The other challenge I have, and that I see commonly with, and I want to use this point to address something that you had mentioned about autism in our communities. You know, is it something that's just rising, or has it been there? Yes, it has been there. I personally, I always say that autism picked me. I didn't choose autism, and it picked me for a darn good reason. I believe that. When I look back at my life and my years in primary school,
right,
I noticed that I have a lot of friends who, by the way, if they had grown up here, would have gotten the diagnosis. I am still friends with them today. The social awkwardness still exists. I am the one person that in the class that they're more likely to reach out to. So when they call me, when my classmates from primary school call me, like, oh, have you heard from so-so? And so I'm like, yes. And they're like, really? How come they always call you? And I've been trying to reach out. How are they doing? I'm like, yeah, I know why. I speak their language.
Right.
But this was the thing, though. I made a list of some of the kids I grew up with back home. And I shared that list with one person. And I said I would not be surprised that these people themselves have children on the spectrum. And this very close friend of mine asked me, why? I said, because they themselves, unknowingly to them, they do. I know a lot of Cameroonians in our community who are adults, have families, without a doubt.
Right. Just like mental illness too. You see somebody
just because you did not get the diagnosis doesn't mean you don't have it.
Right.
You have it. So yes, you can have it. There are different levels of the spectrum. Maybe one brother has it and has a family, and the other brother had it and isn't doing well.
Right. So are we talking hereditary? Are we talking, do we see those, is that the traits are there? Okay. So by the time he gets to you and then, oh, where are we going to go with these issues? Oh my God, I don't even know where to go, which angle to go, because now that's another thing. We don't have records.
Yes.
You have records. You go to the doctor's office and they say, do you have this in your family? I can only tell you that there's glaucoma in my family because my own brother I saw here, but I don't know if my grandfather or great-grandfather ever had anything. I can't even fill that chart in the doctor's office accurately.
Right.
I'm going around the place saying, okay, you know, they say, okay, cancer, it can turn to run in families. I'm sitting there saying, is there anybody in your family? And I'm sitting there writing, no, that's because I'm going to talk about my immediate so-and-so, immediate so-and-so. Right. And then when somebody ends up having, they're like, usai komot. But it was there, we just don't have any charts.
We don't have charts. Sometimes we don't have the records. And I want to go back to a history of we as Black people, how these challenges or diseases, how we have approached them and faced them, especially with something like autism. First of all, anything that has to do with what we term abnormal is something that we keep in the shadows. Right. We don't bring it in the forefront. We don't talk about it. We hide it. You could very well have a best friend who has a relative on the spectrum, but you would never know because that's what we do. We keep those things on the, we suppress them. We say we
at best we whisper about them. Right.
About it. You don't tell anybody. And so that's what we are accustomed to. And so because we're accustomed to that, of course, if granddad had the issue, you don't know because nobody's telling you that. Nobody told you that. What I have commonly found a lot of times is with my immigrant families, especially my African families. Well, his dad didn't talk on time. His dad talked when he was 6. I'm like, yeah. In my mind, like, yeah, dad's got autism. I'm saying that in my head. I'm just thinking out loud as a joke. But when I dig deeper, a lot of times when I meet the families, I can tell from which direction it came. Looking at it genetically, I can pretty much tell which direction. The other thing we're good at work, the developmental pediatrician that I work with, I don't know how he came up with this, but he figured out that parents who do certain profession, for some reason, and there's no scientific, data or evidence to this, okay? This is something that we sat and figured out at work. And so there are two things we look at when we get a report back or a questionnaire back from a parent. The first thing he goes to is look at what the parent's concern is. He reads it. Once he gets from there, he goes to occupation. That occupation is always the giveaway. We're like, oh yeah, we got an engineer.
Wow.
They all do engineering. They're either in IT or they're engineers. And there's a specific type of engineering that they all go into. That was the most fascinating thing.
Let me shut my mouth, because my mouth has been hanging open for a bit.
That was the most fascinating thing, seriously.
Wow.
But we couldn't understand why. Yes, you have those who are doctors, you have those who are either artists, but what we're commonly, we were going based on the things that we're commonly seeing.
Yes, but that's how you do research. That's how you do, and that's how you do stats. You look for a trend. That's what you do.
So we trended it for 5 years, and we're like, wow. And so now it's pretty much like an inside joke for us, because we would say when if a pediatrician or a nurse comes to us, runs into our office and say, oh my goodness, we're seeing this kid who's right here for just a general pediatric appointment. Maybe they have some type of infection, ear infection, or they're there for a sore throat, and they come running to us like, I just had this child can identify shapes, and they're like something's not right. We always ask the nurses, go look at that occupation and come back and tell us. When they go look at the occupation, they call us and they're like, that is an engineer. Woo! We stand up immediately. We're like, let's take a look at the child. And we try to observe to see what subtle things we could pick up. And then we could tell the pediatrician, hey, get some more information. But we think this child might need a referral to us.
Right.
99.9% of the time, our prediction is usually accurate. 99.9.
Wow.
Usually accurate, without a doubt.
There's so much. That is the reason why I was saying, and by the way, let me go ahead and jump in here, because that has just crossed my mind, and thank everybody there that encouraged and went ahead and did donate to Kizitos. He was trying to raise awareness, and he was at that point he had raised some money, and it had kind of stopped there, and he actually took his time to call me to say, well, thank you, I came on the show, sent that video, the recording of it out there, and what people were really impressed about that he said was that they saw a dad for the first time, because they said, I used to see moms talk about, I'm struggling with this. They were just impressed to see a dad talk about this, and they went ahead and he came and he called me and let me know. The same Sunday, we saw that unfortunate video that he had met his goal. So I myself went to look. It says 5,000 of his met. So if you're one of those who listened to what he had to say or watched what he had to say there and went and donated, thank you. What she's saying there, what the good old doctor is saying right here, is the reason why we need to raise the money. This kind of research thing, it has to be funded. We don't quite know the reasons, the exact reasons. There are suggestions, there are trends that we see. Somebody has to do research and come up with the things so we can find solutions, permanent ones. If we do find out that there's something that's going on there that we can do, from diet to whatever it is, because I know that part of the reason why some people are shying away from the autism thing is the whole vaccination issue. Who would have known before COVID-19 that COVID-19 has come and become a different vaccination issue of its own? But that's the thing. But we all, and everybody means well, everybody's thinking well, the frustrations are there, people are having very heated debates and discussions. If the research is done, then you can show scientifically this, they will not even be able to be having all of these problems.
Absolutely. I know the research and the science behind autism is really a complex one, and it's absolutely challenging for the researchers. Kudos to them who spend hours and hours trying to find pinpoint something exactly. But so far, I know for sure that the two things that they are focusing on is genetics. There is a genetic component to autism without a doubt. That has already been
established.
It's clear. The
Right.
question is what specific gene? So they are pinpointing. There's some that have been found. There are others that still need to be discovered.
Right.
That is what that research is going into. But there are genes that have been found. So when a child comes to us, we ask for genetic studies. These are the reasons we're asking for genetic studies. We're not trying to take your DNA to send it to some CIA person who will essentially manipulate it and maybe turn your child into no.
Straight into family and they go.
That's what it is for, because if we find out that your child has one of the genes that have already been identified as being associated with autism, then that answers the question for you. It helps your progeny, the progeny of that child. It helps the future generation to come, because they have to watch the trend of how this thing is developing.
Bingo.
It changes. We've seen families where the mother had a gene, but passed it on to the son, but that gene changed. The focus of where the mutation happened shifted by just one. And so it matters. That research matters. Or if we've seen cases where mom and dad, they didn't find anything, and then that one child came in, didn't have anything, but the next generation, they found the gene. So they had to go back.
Right.
They had to go back.
That is what happens with pretty much anything. Anything. Here, you don't born white man picking. See, both of us are dark. The child has come, the child has straight hair and a pointy nose and whatever. Hey, you don't go born outside. And then you come and find that generations down the thing, back when the Germans were there in Cameroon or whatever it is, they had been in this and they had been in that. That is what tends to happen. Look at now that we've done that research and we now know, look at sickle cell. Sickle cell. I had a classmate of mine come talk about that, to tell you about how knowing the genome is important, because this, trust me, I'm not a science inclined person. AS and SS, they this and they that combination. But imagine when there was no such thing as any AS and anything that anybody knew. Can you imagine what was going on in the village? Vosa this blah blah blah. They don't witch and they don't do. You see?
Exactly. So yeah, so that genetic, they need the genetic studies are ongoing, the research to find more, to discover if there are more genes. And then the other one is the environmental factors, how the environment plays a role, because there is an environmental factor that they're seeing, but the question is what
exactly is it?
That's where, unfortunately, for the past 15 years, the research has mostly focused on the genetic part. And so it will be good in the future to see more environmental studies towards autism. I'm very sure that it will get there. But of course, everybody gets excited once they found these genes. If anybody's interested in knowing the genes, let me know. I will send them to you so that you know, if you're interested in it, just let me know. I keep that information for my own personal knowledge.
Right. No, somebody's going to ask. I've never had a show that didn't have any that fallout from the thing later on. Sometimes we'll listen or they watch and it's just like, oh, great, interesting. A week down the road, 2 weeks down, 3, my dear, can I have that thing? Can you send me a recording of that show? I remember hearing this thing there. I'm looking at this now and I'm wondering, could this be the case?
Another thing I wanted to mention is I will encourage us. And I understand the history with research with Black people hasn't been always the best.
Yes, we are wary.
I would absolutely encourage you to join a research study. I do. I am part of research. I will tell you this, and which was the reason why early intervention was started. So my second son, I found out I had concerns. Let me put it this way. I had concerns that my case there was a genetic component in my case, which was right. My theory was right. Now, Because of that, there was a study, which is called SEED, S-E-E-D, that was
Okay.
ongoing at Marcus Autism Center in Atlanta.
Okay.
There was also a study that was going on at the same time called eye tracking. Eye tracking, an
Like
eye
eyes.
tracking study. Mhm.
Okay.
I signed up for that study when I was 9 months pregnant with my second child. When he was 3 months, they started monitoring him. Because I told them that there is a family history. When there is a family history of autism, please do the investigative studies. When my son was 3 months old, I would take him every single day to Marcus Autism Center for an eye tracking study. So they put him in a car seat. He's in a car seat, and he sits in front of a screen.
Mm.
And they have dots that will ping on different angles on that screen. And they just have him watch a show, Sesame Street, whatever he likes. They put it on there, the Berenstain Bear, whatever those kids shows are.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then they will bing a dot. And the computer will register if he looks at that dot. So the eye tracking, because eye tracking also is lacking in children with autism.
Wow.
Yes, they don't track. And so he did that study. What they found out was that his eye tracking wasn't giving them enough information because it was good. These are the kids who have great eye contact. And
Right.
so because a lot of people have focused on the fact that lack of eye contact is strictly autism, well, you have kids who have great eye contact but still have autism. My second son happened to be in that category of people. That is why when he did the eye tracking, they said, well, we're not picking up anything from eye tracking because his eye tracking is good. That tells me that his eye contact in the future will be perfect, which is true, by the way.
Right.
So they decided to equip him with a recorder to get vocal recordings. They would record his vocal from the moment he woke up from bed. I put a tape in and just hit record. And it's recording every sound. Keep in mind, as a parent, when you put a child in the playpen and you're dishes, you don't hear what sounds they're making. No, you don't.
In our day and time now, not only have you put him in the playpen and doing dishes, you're on the phone. I say, blah, 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 other things are going. Your own show that you want to watch is also on, playing.
Right.
So you're not necessarily hearing
any sounds he's making. But that recording was hearing every vocal. The tape sat on his chest. So not only could it hear the silent internal vocal recordings, also the verbal. It will record both of them. And so I will send it on a weekly basis. They did that for 4 months. They sent me a tape every week, and the computer would chart it and identify specific vocal sounds that this child made. When my son was 9 months old, I got a call from Marcus Autism Center and said, we have concerns. We need for you to bring this child in as soon as possible. I asked them on the phone, what took you guys so long? They asked me why. I said, because I thought it was very unusual for me to have a child that will go to sleep, wake up from sleep, and I'm waiting for the monitor, the baby monitor. He made no sounds.
Right, right. That's
Usually when
they cry. You can cry.
Exactly.
Go to the bottle.
Yes.
Trying to change the child.
Right. Exactly.
And then you are very happy, say, oh, my picking quiet. You know, I would have been saying, because my own were here with trouble. I'm like, Jay, if the picking not cries up, then the better, you know.
And this child was when he woke up. But when I walk into the room, he was just sitting there in his crib. He'll turn and look at me, and this is what he'll do. He will smile and look at me. But his diaper was as heavy as you could think of anything. And I'm like, that is not normal. So when I told them that,
Wow.
they told me to come in tomorrow. I took him in. That was how my second son started early intervention. So they decided to use a model which apparently has been ongoing research. It came out of a doctor in Florida who's a developmental pediatrician. And she wrote this model to teach parents how to interact, to have a stimulatory interaction with their child as part of the early intervention process, because it has been proven for a long time that parents who are involved and engaged with the child in autism, that child makes significant progress.
Right.
So this is for my parents who think that if you just go drop them off at therapy and they do their 30 minutes, you have nothing else to do at home. It's wrong. I sat in at every therapy session. I took notes. I was the only parent who was always in that observation room. I was watching I still have videos up to date on my phone.
Right.
And I eventually got trained in behavior modification techniques. I took down notes. I still have my notes till date.
You really were cut out. You really were just cut out. Listening to you speak, you really were cut out for this. You're right. Your own self-assessment of who you are and why you were put here to just help with this domain.
And the reason
and
why
then God gave you the sweetest case studies. It says, don't go to school, drive to a place to go. I will send them to you. Please, dear, look at them and help my world. Yeah. So you're doing exactly what it is that we need you to be doing. And God chose to just give you the children to love on, have your own special children, your own self. Don't go looking for them, to just have them. Because it looks like from what you're saying, not all three are not on the same level of respect. Yeah, then why you? I don't doubt what you say about your own self at all.
All three of them are absolutely different. And so when Marcus Autism Center called me to take my son in, they told me that based on their research, that my son made his vocals, there were certain vocals that he made that only the computer could pick up. It was very subtle, that even us as humans, we couldn't pick up. But the computer picked up specific vocal recordings that were similar to other children who eventually got the diagnosis of autism. But they told me that we're not saying that your child will have autism. I'm like, oh yeah, I know he's got it. Because I could tell from the first one, the second one, I'm like, oh yeah, I know he's got it. And so they started early intervention. That is how my son started therapy. He was 9 months when he started therapy, did therapy up to 3, and then went into the public school to continue services. I did early intervention and I did intense intervention.
Correct. Early, so you figure out that that's what's going on, and then now you address the issues that are brought up there. So by the time they get to a certain age,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Does he still have quirks? Yes, we still have quirks when we meet our friends and we just say, "Hi, my name is Bradley."
Right. Yeah.
And that's it. But other than that, we have a fantastic conversation.
Right. I have a friend whose son, he just turned 18. He has his driver's license and drives. You will not know. You just will see a little bit of, you can just say that this quiet kid kind of a thing. And then not as bubbly and chatty, but very, very functional.
Yeah.
So if somebody does not tell you, we have friends in our circle of friends who did not know that he was on the spectrum till his sister began to raise awareness for it. And they're like, why is she doing it? And she says, my brother. They're like, what brother? How many brothers do you have? She said, this one right here. He's especially, how? Are you sure?
Yeah. A lot of times.
That's the early intervention thing. He too, months old. Speech therapy, the whole 9 yards, and bam.
And absolutely. It was him and his younger sister who got that early intervention. Right. So because they're on different levels on the spectrum, it was a tough decision for me to make. To say, okay, I have to sacrifice one person because it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. This is not easy for any parent. The drive times to take these children to therapy, it's very draining, without a doubt. So it was hard for me to take all three of them at the same time. So I had to put one person on pause, which was a tough decision for me. And I'm like, okay,
Right.
to move, which one do I put on pause?
Exactly.
But at the same time, I knew who I could work with, even if I wasn't getting, and that was my first son. So I knew that I could work with my first son on a personal level at home, while the other two
go get outside help.
They got the early intervention, because I knew that if I had hit the first 5 years in time,
right,
and that's what I did. I hit the interventions in the first 5 years. That when everybody meets them, those two, they're like, no, Ben, they lied to you. I'm like, let me show you my mileage.
Right. How far I've come. How far I've come. What you see here is that you sound exactly like that friend of mine, that girlfriend of mine. She says, yeah, you are all saying this now. Had I not identified the issue early and had the early intervention, you would not be saying this story now. So unfortunately, now we hear of the extreme cases, because sometimes look at the extreme cases on the really other end, furthest end of the spectrum, where now those kids have grown up and then they are adults. Yeah. So they're still doing the diaper thing. They're still doing that is just so painful to watch. The kid take off the diaper, smear the walls with the stuff from it, and I'm going. That is just severely affected. Yeah. I don't know, for those severe cases, do you still think that even those severe cases could have been at least improved with early intervention? Right.
Yes, it could. Yes, absolutely, without a doubt.
Right.
I have seen parents who refuse to get an assessment because they say, oh, he's just mild. Yeah. You're right. He's mild now.
Right.
A mild case can become a severe case tomorrow. He's mild now just because, and this is the example I give to parents so they can put it in context. Of course, it's mild now because when you're in Target or at Kroger or at Walmart and something happens and the child is 3 years old, you can scoop them up from that cart, lock them up your shoulder and run out the parking lot. Fast forward, when he's 20, try that at Walmart, let's see it. Right. So this is why I say, do the early intervention. Every state has different state laws for autism. Right. Be familiar. If you're not familiar, find someone who's familiar with it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I always tell people that my first son gave me my PhD in autism. He was nonverbal for 5 years. I spent 5 years taking down every single note I could take down when I went to every therapy session. I read more articles than my therapist expected of me to read. And they're like,
I can imagine.
This woman. I wanted to know and learn about this thing because I was so amazed by the fact that I had a 3-year-old who you will read a book to him, and the very next day, he would sit down and just say, Brown Bear, bye. And he would say the name of the author, illustrated. But I'm like, illustrated? He's 3 years old. How in the world is he even saying illustrated?
Exceptional.
Complex names. Like he could pronounce complex names.
Wow.
But he could not say, I want to eat.
The basic. So he's like way out there, and the basic thing that the little.
He could not tell me. He could not tell me, I want to eat, I'm sleepy, I'm tired. He could not. None of those things existed. But I heard every other thing and his speech therapist, I'll never forget her and the day she sat with me. By the way, I keep in communication with all my children's therapists. That's that mother. I'm that mother.
So what are their ages now? So that we can.
Absolutely. My first is 11. The middle one is 8 years old. He's the gentle giant, and the last one, she is 6.
Okay, so that's why it makes it, because what we say, you say keep in touch, which that tells us how long you really have kept in touch.
Yes, I keep in touch with all the therapists. So his very first therapist his speech therapist. She sat with me and she said, your son can read. I said, no, he can't. She said, yes, your child can read. I said, well, he's never read. What are you talking about? My son can't read. She said, yes, he can read. And I asked her why. She said, well, she forgot something that she needed for his therapy that day. So she dashed out of the room to go get it from her office, which was next door. When she came back, she saw my son open the book. This is a book that she's never read. It's a new book.
Right. She had not read to him before.
Right, because she noticed that every book she read to him, the next day, he would complete.
He's reciting it back.
Right. And so she's like, wait a minute, this kid is really, his memory is off the charts. And so she brought a new book. Because she to herself, she's like, no, it's because I've read it too often. Let me find a new book. She gets a new book and she leaves it in the office. She leaves it in the therapy room.
Go get something.
When she comes back, opens the door, she sees him reading this book. But what catches her attention is the fact that he's on page 5, reciting page 5, but he's still on page 2. So he's finished.
Wait, say that again.
So he's on page 2 of the book, right?
Right.
But he's reciting what's on page 5 of the book.
So he had already read 4 of that down.
Right.
It's coming now, and yet he just has the whole book now in his head.
It's in his head already. That's when she called me for a meeting.
Oh, give me that. Let me pass arithmetic.
I know. She called me in the therapy room and said, I think your son has hyperlexia.
We hear dyslexia, any other lexia, but that one.
I started crying.
It's like, okay, what is this thing?
Right. Not that I didn't know, because I hadn't processed what she has said yet.
Right. You said I asked you to repeat what it is that you said to me about what page and what's going on here.
I started crying, and then she was shocked because she was like, wait a minute, why is she crying? And then I stopped. I was like, wait, did you say hyperlexia? Right. She said yes. At that point in time, I was working as a part-time teacher teaching medical terminology. And so I broke it down. I'm like, hyper, above, over exceeding.
Right.
Lexia, lexic.
He is above, way above the normal. Yeah.
Right. And I started laughing, and I was wiping my tears and laughing. I'm like, oh my God. And she said, I get it, Mom, because I thought I had to think it out loud. And she started laughing, and she's like, I get it, Mom. I know. I'm like, yeah, another diagnosis. I wasn't trying to deal with that. Right. But she's like, I understand. But she's like, yes, your son, show it to him once. He's got it.
He gets it.
They all have a gift.
They do.
You need to find out what that gift is and find it very early on. Use the gift to work or strengthen the weakness. When you find the gift, you have solved more than 80% of the problem. Now use that gift. He's musically inclined, my first. That is why we call him Beats Boy. That's his nickname. Right. He creates beats. Wow. That's all he does. Right. There isn't a song that my son he listens to every genre of music. He's actually in his room, probably creating a beat. Some of the songs that he listens to, I have never played in this house, but it always baffles my friends who come here and they're like, he's listening to Prince. I'm like, I went to Cameroon and came back and my son was listening to Prince. I don't know. I've never played Prince in my house. He hears a note on TV. He goes upstairs. He has a piano in his room. He goes upstairs. I had to put the piano in his room because I was sick and tired of waking up at night. He's downstairs at 2 o'clock in the morning playing the piano in the living room. I said, oh, Lord have mercy. We can't sleep in this house. So I carried the whole thing and put it in his room. I'm like, knock yourself out.
Come on, Mozart. Come on, Beethoven.
He will play. He plays the note of his favorite TV show on his computer, on his piano. That's about to be a gift to Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley that's going to be their ways kid. And that's his strength. And every teacher, the first time he shows up in school, that's the first thing the teachers tell me when they meet him. we like your son. And by the way, do you know he likes music? I'm like, yeah, tell me again. You're like the 50th person that's telling me that.
Right.
My second son, he sees numbers. The first one with his hyperlexia, he's also the spelling bee champion for his class.
Right. That could be, I just see.
Spelling is his thing.
For me, I call that cheating. He's cheating. If I'm in the same class with him now, he already has the book in his head. Oh my God. Yes. The rest of us are going to have to struggle with it. He just take the whole thing, puff. It's in his head.
It is. So I always told the teacher, she would give them homework on Monday for their spelling test on Friday. So I told her, I said, quit sending him home, because the moment he scans that, all it takes is for him to do this.
Right.
And he knows what's on it. Oh yeah. Because one day he brought his sheet of paper. I said, we're going to practice spelling. I said, number 1, help. He wrote down. And I was busy in the kitchen. And he said, number 2, mommy, can. And he wrote it down. I looked at the list. I was like, oh my God. And then he's on the dining table. I'm all the way in the kitchen. And then the next thing, I'm busy cooking.
And you have the list.
I have the list. It's with me. And he said, number 3. I think number 3 was house or something. Number 3, house. And he wrote it down, looked at the list. I said, oh my God, he's memorized the list. I'm like, there's no point. I just tore the list in the trash, and I sent a message to his teacher. I said, please do not send Braylon with the list home, because he's already memorized it.
He has the list. He knows it already.
It's in his head already. So don't give it to him. Just have him show up on Friday, because we were trying to see if he truly knows he could spell the words. And yes, he can, because he showed, they stopped sending him home with study lists for spelling, and he'll show up and words that they've never gone over in class.
He has it in his head on Monday. What they're supposed to check on Friday, he already knows. I've realized that there's some kids that I teach, since I teach, there's some, look, I say the first time they got it, you know what, when those kids take their, because they're not supposed to have their cell phones out or anything out, but when those particular kids, so the cell phone rule is key, I don't let that happen. But when I see that kind of kid has taken his novel out and is reading, I don't say a word. I let him read. The kid got it. Stop bothering him with baby, say. This are the, you almost have the same ones are sitting there after you've said it for your 8th time. The child is still, what's going on here? That's when you say, honey, after class, can you tell mom to pick you up right about maybe 4 instead after the school is out, and let's just have this chat to get it in. I can see them in my classes. They got it the first time you open your mouth and said, then they're asking a question which is almost forcing you to teach level 2, level 3 stuff. I'm like, okay, GM, please just let it be. I can tell you why this is this way right there, but no, but they're asking you questions who said, but didn't you just say we don't pronounce, we're supposed to link this? That's how French goes. You're supposed to link this to, do you realize you just said this and you did not link the thing? I'm like, oh my gosh, this child is going to force me to teach something from level 4.
Right.
Over here, where these girls have this, or like the rest of the class hasn't understood what I'm trying to say about just the alphabet. So I say, let me tell you, and I like that. So I get carried away sometimes. So I'm going and I end up finding myself teaching that one child. And I say, okay, no, we have to stop. We're losing the class. I'll just talk to you and explain to you later on why this is that way. Let's just go on with the class right now. They're there. They are there, and you can tell. And sometimes they have their head down.
Yeah.
You know how we think, come on, sit up there, look right at me. That tells me you're focusing and you're listening to the lesson. There's some who even need to doodle. They need to be writing something, occupying themselves with something while they're listening and listening to your processing the thing. And my normal teacher thing says, hey, that's the child that's off task. So you're like, okay, let me see whether this child has been following along. And I ask the child and he tells you the entire thing. And the entire thing.
Right. So there was this, he actually passed away, one of the oldest living, he was also a savant. So they were extremely, but you know,
gifted and talented at a certain level that just beats humanity.
Right. But of course he had autism.
Right.
And so they watched how some of these kids who have that, the severity of the symptoms, it doesn't fail that the kids with the most severe autism symptoms usually have that savant ability. Not all of them do, but they're gifted in something. And you have to nurture that gift. Because if you don't, it will disappear. It will go away. Like anything, you have
then all you'll be left with is the inadequacies
Right.
as
Exactly.
opposed to a very high performing person in that field that they were, no wonder they're geniuses, because once somebody found out that that was their thing, and bam, 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 they owned, the laser sharp focused on that, and the child exploded.
So they found out that the reason why he could read a book that was, let's say, a book this amount of pages.
Yes.
He could finish it in maybe an hour, was because when he opens a page in a book, right? Let me show you what that looks like. So I opened this page. These are 2 pages, right?
Right.
So they found out that when he's reading, his left brain is reading the left side of this page and his right brain is reading the right side. So he's reading 2 pages at once.
Oh.
Unlike me and you, we have to read 1 page.
I take my time to just read the one line 8 times, go, and then not even try to just, wow. That's what the whole dyslexia thing is. Oh God, it's just an amazing.
So that's where that's what it's common with hyperlexia, that they're reading both pages at the same. So they've already seen everything on the 2 pages.
Right.
That is why when I told my speech therapist, when she told me that, and I told her I'd stop reading to my son, because once I take the book to read to him, he started humming. He will stand up, he will run back and forth, he will leave the bedroom and go into the living room. And I'm like, what's the point? I'm in the bedroom, why is he all the way down in the hallway? She said, no, he is listening to you. It's that split brain. See, he has one side of the brain listening to that story. The other brain is doing his own things that he wants to do.
That's what I see. I tell you, I have seen it in my classrooms. The kid, and I used to think, I cannot wait to ask this one and trap him and see he has not been listening. Let me see. I'm going to ask the question after this and see what he says. I asked the question, run through the thing, and said, you said this, you said that, you gave the example, so and so thing, so and so thing. But that child had his head down. He even had the little, this ones, they ask for paper, and they are writing and doing some stuff there. So they look off task, but he's listening to what you're saying there and can get every word and repeat it. My goodness, you are a joy to talk to. You are a joy to talk to. You can see expertise where it is. Somebody has the thing. You too are the kind of person who you found your thing. And then you sat on it and owned it, and you own it. You own the knowledge that you've got. I will tell the listeners and the viewers, I've even forgotten that we have listeners and viewers. I'm just chatting with you. I hope they're still there. Hello. If you're still listening and you're still watching, you're still, hi, I forgot all about you. I'm listening to my thing and enjoying myself. And just like learning a lot of stuff. So you have done an amazing job here with such purpose, with such passion. And I should just ask now, because I know we have gone way over the limit. Not that I care, because for me it's important information. I couldn't be bothered with it. How does anybody reach you or contact you so they can say, okay, I'm wondering about this, I need information about this. What's the best way to contact you or reach you, or what are the best ways to contact you or reach you?
Best ways to reach me is phone. Send me a text message and I will give you my phone number. And that's because it's easier to reach me by text than call me.
Right. So that when you get to see it, you'll see it. When you get to see it, I can attend to it, even if you cannot answer because you're busy.
Right. A lot of times my personal phone does not work at work. At the clinic, it doesn't work at all.
Right.
And because I stay extremely up and running up and down, it's sometimes hard for me to even realize that I have a missed call.
Right.
I usually encourage people, text me, just let me know, hey, I'm so and so, and I would like to talk to you about my challenges. I never turn down anything that is related to autism. Right. I don't.
I can testify. She didn't know me. She hasn't met me before today. But she was ready. We picked a date, and look at what's happening now.
Right. I never turn down. So it doesn't matter when you reach out to me. I don't care the time. I always make time for autism. Right. There are 2 things in my life other than my family and my close friends that I make time for. Autism and dance. Those 2 things, those are my 2 passions.
What
And
kind of dance? Now, I was here ready to write down the number, and I'm like, okay, no dance. This show will never end. But let's keep going. What kind of dance? Traditional, classic, ballet?
the good thing is I am good with every genre. That's the bad thing. Or is it a good thing? I'm not sure. I'm good with any and every genre. I pick up on it. However, my area of focus and what I concentrate on is the Angolan-born dance called Kizomba.
Okay, so instead of taking the phone number down first, let me take down that name first of the dance. Kizomba, like Kizoma.
Kizomba.
MBA. Okay, Kizomba. Let me write that down. I'm going to go look for it.
So, absolutely.
You're going to have to come back to the show to talk about all things.
I have a passion for African dances, and I also talk about how traditional dances from different parts of Africa has influenced our modern day dances.
Right. Oh,
so that's
nobody needs to tell me that for me to believe it. I can so see.
My area of strength, and I'm able to break down the different types of dance and how it relates to the culture. As you know, I'm very, very fascinated with other cultures. So
we will have to have a different chat on that, because I am looking at, you're saying that about African dances, and I'm already going to just our own Cameroon that has so many different dances, from those that do the shoulders, those that do the belly, those that do the back, those that do just only that little one Africa in miniature, the ones that are stomping feet, the Maasai ones that are jumping, the ones that are jumping, the Zulu ones that are shaking the little sketchy thing. I'm just going like, wow, there's Dombolo. There is all kinds of things.
So I talk about there's a friend of mine who started a series called the Origin Series, and we talk about that. We talk about how these different dances have influenced a lot of the dances that we do today, and especially in what we call Afrobeats.
Right. Oh yeah.
And so the origin of that was the traditional dances. So we try to have all these people who do Afrobeats, we try to teach them to pay homage to the heritage. It came from somewhere. There is a culture behind this. It's not just me stomping my feet or just me gyrating, my hips left and right or moving in this specific direction. There is a spiritual connection to it. And we have to teach them how to stay in tune and connect to the music.
Right.
Because you have to have an ear for the music. So
you do. Look, this show is never going to end. You see how the show is called Musings and Music? Trust me, because I like music. I don't do music. I can't listen. I have to have headphones on. So I pick the strains. You hear, you focus on the bass guitar. I'm like, wow. Sometimes you focus on the drums. The beat right through your chest. It resonates in your belly.
Yeah.
I am like, how do somebody hear music and they don't and not move and not dance? I'm like, whoa. It is.
All my friends who've known me from back home, if there's one thing you had to ask them, how would you describe her? They're like, she's always dancing. That's true.
She's always dancing.
That's true.
That is awesome. But let's have that phone number, because I'm not sure. I know somebody has picked up a pen or a pencil right now and they're ready for it. All this chatter was good enough for them to go grab your pen and your paper. What's that number that they can reach you at?
So it's 404
610 1012. I'll read that back out. 404 610 1012. And one more time, if anybody is still trying to write while we're talking here, then it's 404 610 1012. And you'll be talking to Dr. Bernadette Kilo. Okay.
Send me a message. You can either text me, WhatsApp. If you do have WhatsApp, send me a text message on WhatsApp.
That same number as a WhatsApp, yes.
Or you can send me a regular text message. It doesn't matter. I will make time if I am, whatever it is I'm doing. Once I hear the word, I have concern, especially for my Cameroonian parents. I will stop. It doesn't matter. I will make the time. I know right after this, I have a family that I have to talk to. They're not Cameroonian. They're African American. Right. And they called me from work. It was on Thursday. This is part of my support for Georgia. Right. And I got a call from the organization that there's a parent who they just want to talk to somebody.
Right.
And So I'm always talking to a parent.
Yes, and thank you for doing that. Thank you for sharing yourself with the community. That is something, because I know that you've driven from that Atlanta where you are to Charlotte here to do consultations like this. And it's not as if you are the one saying it. I heard it first from the people that you did the work for, who were so very pleased and talked about you. So it's not as if she's the one who said, hey, here I am, can I come and do? No, I didn't know her, she didn't know me. She came recommended, and I got the phone number and called. So it's not, this is the kind of one way, it's not anybody trying to prove herself, anything. It's the other way around. I was calling for help for anybody who might need this help. May not need it right now because you don't know that you do, or may not need it right now because you don't really, not yet. But if you're of childbearing age, a child may be on the way. If you're of grandma expecting grandbaby's age, then a grandchild may be on the way. And then your neighbor's child, and then anything else. So those things, the more we know, the better informed we are, the better we'll be able to handle and be of help. If I just quick story, this past Wednesday, I was sent to go cover a class because somebody was out, and I went there, and this kid jumped right up doing and stuff. And thank God I had the knowledge before. I'm like, Tourette's syndrome, this is what's going on here. The kids, before the kids in the class could start to do anything, I said, well, you just sit on down here, if that's okay. And she was out the door. And I said, okay, just keep pacing, just keep going. Let me try to call the office and ask they should check for her name and see a counselor, and if we can send them down there, because the sounds were coming out.
Right.
And she was, can you imagine if that had been my first years in this thing from Africa teaching. A child does that, I'm like, yeah, Male, what is this thing? Kingdom Chris, blah, 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 run up and down the place. The TV crews would have come to the school immediately, because I would have made a big old scene and some assaulting. I'm like, wait, it don't happen.
Right.
But I know now not to just jump to conclusions and say this is a child. No, I could see, because that is the child that even first smiled at me when I walked into the room. That's not my class. I came to cover the class. And I was saying, so you all know what you're supposed to do? They said, yes, the teacher did leave some stuff for them to do and stuff. And she sat there and class was going. I do not know what it is that triggered it, because something usually triggers it. Because they work now on their Chromebooks.
Right.
I don't know what it is that was there that got that preachy thing, well dressed and everything. She was like, pam, pam, pam. Out the door she goes. Down the thing, whoa. So knowledge is power, I tell you, because if I had seen that and not known anything about it, and now when the counselor came, she said, thank you for calling and everything, she's fine, and just keep an eye and confirm this is Tourette's that was going on there and stuff. So
absolutely.
We owe it to ourselves, me the teacher, me the mother, me the neighbor, not to see the kid that's just looking like a thing and not say anything and just say, like happened to this dear child, God rest that precious 5-year-old soul. Maybe we could have done something if we just knew better. Oprah Winfrey says, when you know better, then you do better.
Absolutely.
So now you've listened to this, you're one of those who's going to be held to a higher standard now because you've heard it. Stop doing the moo thing, the retarded thing, the picking your days on kind thing, whip the child, the thing. Just make sure that it's not be strong head. Before, don't decide it's a strong head, go do the, find out, get them tested, and then have the early intervention done. If you've got nothing else, early intervention. I know nobody wants to come and talk about their kid. You say, you can't talk about my picking. Half of your picking, the people are on the defensive. People are on the defensive and in denial. So be careful also how you go and tell anybody that's what you're thinking. But you as the grandma, you as the sister, the daughter, you can start to say, maybe you want to, have you looked into this? Have you checked? And you might let us get the geniuses we deserve to get from these children, as opposed to, I cannot call anybody anything a headache, as opposed to the serious, grave issue you get when that child is now 21, 22, 40 years old, with no skills. Whereas they did have a gift that was not discovered and nurtured and honed and put out there for the benefit of you yourself, because you're going to be proud, and the benefit of the community that is that I could use their expertise that God has gifted them with specifically. So now that I've made my own little soapbox and talked my own head off, more than even the poor precious person who came here to do that talking.
Okay, that's okay. Yes. So to my Cameroonian parents who have children on the spectrum, and one question, and this is not only for my Cameroonian parents, but this is across the board. The one question I always get, which is a question I'm about to answer for another parent, is, will my child ever be able to contribute to society? Can they integrate in the society? The answer to that question is, it's not a predictable, but they can, without a doubt. It's possible, but you have to put in the work. Just the simple fact that you have had the child assessed is just the first step. Now you have to do all the other things, okay? First, I encourage, when a parent asks me that kind of question, what I need for them to do is change their mentality, because it's how you have perceived this thing. I always encourage parents to, first thing you have to do is know the child. That's the first thing, as an individual. One. Second thing is know the diagnosis that the child has. So understand autism as much as you can. Educate yourself on autism. The third thing you want to know is the child with the diagnosis. These are three people in one. You have to know them. If you don't, you will stay lost for a very long time and you will struggle. So you have to know these things.
Say them again. You said know the child as an individual. Look, that is advice for all of us parents, period. Not two kids are the same, not even two Siamese twins. They're not the same. How can you say what worked for this one, worked for the other one? We already even know that as parents. No, there's the kind of one, if you yell at them, oh my goodness, they shrink and become so and so. And there's the other one where you say, I beg campus, just go do that, blah, blah, blah. And they can take it and they can do it. And that is how they function. So already you said know the child as an individual. Then you said know the diagnosis, educate yourself on all that there is to educate. And what was that third one again?
The third one is know the child with the diagnosis.
Correct.
Absolutely. So if you have a Brandon, know Brandon as an individual. Who is Brandon? Know Brandon's personality. Take everything and you just have this child. The second thing you want to do is take away the child, the Brandon. Now know this thing called autism, if that is what the diagnosis is. You have to focus on the diagnosis. Now educate yourself on what that thing is. Then the third thing you want to do is know Brandon and the autism. So that way, when you meet those three people, you know how to communicate with the three different people at every given time.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, my dear. Again, that phone number is 404-610-1012. 404-610-1012. And thank you, Dr. Bernadette Kilo. You will be coming back to talk about more about this and about Kizomba, that Kizomba thing. We have to explore it.
Anytime, without a doubt, anytime.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you. I cannot thank you enough for making the time to come sit down here and just bless us with the knowledge that you have acquired because of the gifts, 3 of them, that God blessed you with. Thank you so very much. And keep doing what you're doing. More power to you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure and an honor, without a doubt. Thank you so much.
No, you're
thank
welcome.
you for creating the platform. Not everybody understands and does it. So thank you.
Oh yeah, with what you're doing, we will all get there. Some of us get there sooner, some of us, it takes us a longer time. May the day soon come when this is explained and as obvious as that's like what we figure out what to do with sickle cell and other things where it's understood far better and the research is done. That would be my prayer. These are children we've been blessed with. Please let us look at them as that. They are blessings, not a headache. And the earlier we find that out and figure out what to do, the better it will be for us all. So let's please just have that attitude and let's give ourselves the job to go read up on stuff and not be ignorant about it.
Absolutely. I even forgot to mention, before I forget to mention, 2 years ago, I found a job. You go on, it was posted on LinkedIn. So they were looking for a job position.
Okay.
The description.
Job description, yes.
The job description in it was And this is a huge company. It was actually Young and Ernst and Young.
Oh, yes.
This was the job description. Seeking, first sentence.
Right.
Seeking an individual with autism spectrum disorder. First sentence.
Wow.
And they listed the things. A lot of companies are expanding their knowledge on neurodiversity. That's what they call our kids. They're neurologically diverse.
Right.
A lot of companies are seeking the skills that these children have. Google
Right.
#1 at hiring them. If you want to see autism in action at work, please take a trip to Silicon Valley. If you also want to see autism at work, take a trip to Israel. The drones that are used in the US of A, in the military, are made by children on the spectrum in Israel. Israel has done a fantastic job at rehabilitating these kids and getting them into society. Google.
It's like you walking around the place with a gold mine and you're sitting on it and just saying, this is dirt, this is dirt. You do not know that you should look and dig and pan for gold. We do not know what we...
has a pipeline program from 8th grade to the CIA. They're looking for kids with autism to sit in front of a computer and decode those secret codes that come from other. These kids are smart.
They are.
The therapy they need so that they have skill sets that everybody is looking for. But if you don't give them the skills, you don't help them achieve the skill set, then they get left out and they're looking for them. You have companies now that are putting in there that they only want a child with autism for this job.
Right. That's what I was saying, because you see, that's what you've even seen in a couple of movies. You see how they have a person there, the kid, they bring you, come and be the one who's called, they feed them the thing. And the bad dude is standing behind him and saying, figure this out for me. And then the kid is there doing, and you see all those things going. That's kind of it. The person who is there, he has the money and everything, but the person who's doing the actual work, this is mind blowing and just helping me see the whole thing from a different point of view. This is I get it. I get it. And let's not get to that point where, oh no, only the side of the kid that is not what is conformist is what ends up being there. And then the child, can you imagine this, the child's frustration to think about it, the child's frustration too, because they have that and they know they have it. It has not been exploited. So they are there. And how are they going to behave?
It's a challenge because those are the kind of cases that we get, and the child has attempted suicide twice. And that's what I would like to tell your parents, please. When the child gets to that point, we don't touch that case. Once we see suicidal ideation or attempt in the chart, we don't touch that case. The reason we don't touch it immediately is because we cannot tell at any given moment. At that time, we can't tell, is it depression or is it autism?
Right. Now the waters have been muddied.
It has been very muddy.
So we don't know anymore. But if you had brought the child much earlier, before they were then, we could have said, oh, it is autism. This is where we are right here. Now we don't know. Now we don't know.
Once that kicks in, then it becomes a liability for us. We touch the case, and if the child tells us one thing for another and we miss
lawsuit.
So once we see that word, we're like, oh no, we're not touching this. Take the child to psychiatry. Let them figure it out. Seriously.
Poor child.
But we can look at the history and say, oh my God, this child definitely meets the criteria. But we're putting up with, we cannot assess unless this child has been stable for a good 6 months.
Right. And you have good reason to believe that that's not going to be part of the equation. That's not going to come and influence.
Absolutely.
I tell you. I told you all she's going to have to be back. But she's going to remember one more thing that she did not say after this, and then we have to do like 3 or 4 more shows for this. I have learned a ton of things. And so thank you again. Thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing because we are benefiting from it. We are benefiting from it, whether directly or indirectly, we are. So I'm going to go ahead and promise you all that she'll be back to talk about other things, including Kizomba. I'm telling you, I'm not even joking. And then since Kids is going to be doing his marathon a week from today, right? About a week on Sunday. It's Sunday in a week. Good luck, kids, if you're going to be listening to this before, and hopefully if this is coming on after, then I'm already going to go and say congratulations, because I don't care whether you come in first, last, in the middle, what kind of a thing, you've already done what it is that you set out to do, which is to raise awareness. And for all of you parents that are there with special kids, no wonder the people are not wanting to say autistic kids, for people who have kids, special needs kids, special children, God bless you. I know it can be a challenge. But then, I hope you're encouraged by what you have heard. If you did not know this information already, I hope you're encouraged by what you've heard. So you go back and look at this baby of yours again and just see in them what it is that God created them to be, that they do have within them, and try to find out what it is and set them on that path so they can achieve what they came to this world to do for your own good, dear parent, for the good of your community, and for the good of everybody. I think that would be a pretty good note to end on, and just say thank you all for listening and for watching. All right, now, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep doing what you're doing. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.